And there we have it. We've created a resilient canine. So throughout these different life stages and what a dog should be exposed to as they graduate and as they progress through their ages, depending on them as an individual, is that they need to be desensitized to environment slowly. Within that canine wellness wheel, we do need to allow a dog to have a choice. Our dog is a whole organism. Our dog is an animal. Our dog needs to be able to have a level of understanding that equally can be heard and equally can have choice. Choices are very, very liberating. That might be the dog can choose on what direction of a route it wants to go on a walk. A choice, a compromise of rather than a dog being by our side at heel, being a little bit in front of us or even behind us. It can be in terms of self-foraging when the dog is outside or in the home. To be able to create this resilient ecosystem and create our dog to be resilient to its environment in this modern day world, we need to apply the natural life stages, and also we need to consider our dog as an individual and a whole organism. It's no good comparing our dog to our neighbour's dog, to our auntie's dog, to our cousin's dog, or equally it's no good comparing one dog to another dog that lives with us within that group composition. Our dogs are individuals. The speed at which they learn, the ease at which they can progress through their life stages, when we may need to come down those life stages, or when a dog may need support, is going to vary. So in that sense, we are always considering the canine wellness wheel, the importance of wellness and how we can create a resilient ecosystem in our dog, so that we prevent emotional, physical, physiological, energetic imbalances, and we really create this strong and healthy ecosystem. We support our dog as a genetically ancient canine that lives in a modern day world. That means we have an awareness of not just the life stages, not just the canine wellness wheel, but also the importance of communication, how a dog is going to naturally communicate to another individual, and understand the distinction between dog-to-dog communication and dog-to-human communication. The ability for a dog to learn in their own time and to possibly break that down depending on the dog's functional character. And the importance of exercise. Remember, within that canine wellness wheel, there was rest and movement, and a very fine balance between rest and movement. So movement is really important from a biological perspective, from a physical and physiological perspective. Oxygen really needs to move around the dog's body, and that is transported through the dog's blood system. So this is why movement is key. But when we consider movement in terms of exercise, again, having that understanding and awareness of what exercise can create, not too dissimilar to stress or also chase, anything that is going to create a change within the biochemistry, and this is what exercise can create. So one of my concerns that we allow our dogs to do is to have too much exercise. A lot of people that I speak to seem to have this understanding that our dogs as canines, as they were naturally in the wild, they would be running around like all day, every day for hours upon end. And this really isn't true. What we know from studies is that a dog on average needs 14 to 17 hours of sleep a day. And equal with that is the importance of rest. And that's why I include rest in the canine wellness wheel. Rest is so important to allow for parasympathetic activity, for energy to be restored, reinvested, for restoration, for time for the body to repair at whatever level it needs to, for a body to feel peace, and for a body to be told that it is safe enough to rest here. So that's why when I look at exercise, I really promote the importance of exercise and the importance of movement, but there being this fine balance. Because what can happen is too much exercise can create an athletic dog. It can create a dog that generates and produces too much adrenaline in its body, so it actually struggles to rest. That can create frustration, it can create hyperarousal, it can create a nuisance dog, or a dog that actually starts to develop other hypersensitivities. It can also affect the nervous system. And again, the whole point of the canine wellness wheel is about keeping our dogs safe. The very need at a cellular level for a dog to feel safe and to not compromise these systems that our dogs are, being a genetically ancient canine. We want to create a resilient ecosystem for our dogs, an ecosystem that feeds parasympathetic activity rather than sympathetic activity. Sympathetic activity creates a nervous system that is irate, that is electric, and that is inflamed. And what we now know, what scientists are now discovering, and what we know from the canine wellness wheel, is that all systems are connected to each other. So where there is this sympathetic activity, there is stress, there is arousal, and this has a knock-on effect on all systems. So just remember that exercise is important, but too much of a good thing is then bad, and that includes exercise. Too much exercise can actually damage the dog internally. It can create a very heightened nervous system. That nervous system can be very, very difficult to calm, and that can have an effect within the dog's other ecosystems within its body. And there we have it, our life stages, and the importance of these life stages so that we allow for a safe and steady graduation of our dog as a pup, up until an adult, and then for the rest of their life expectancy. I really work quite rigorously and precisely with life stages if I have a pup or I'm working with someone that has got a pup. The difference is if we have a rescue dog, some of the life stages have already been missed. But what we can do with our dogs, regardless of their age, is that we can bring them back down to the different life stages. So not all is lost. It might be that some behaviours and some communications become more challenging, and even then they become even more slower to adjust. So we have to give that animal even more time. But that doesn't matter. We have the entire life expectancy of our dog to get through these life stages. The reason why I also like working with these life stages is when we have got a dog stable, when we have got a dog resilient, we can actually move around with these different life stages depending on our dog's requirements and depending on the requirements of the environment. Remember, the only thing in nature that is constant is change, that beautiful sentence that we get from Cindy Engel. So it might be that if we are bringing our pup home or a rescue dog home, if there is a newborn in the family, a member of the family who've just had a baby, or we're bringing in a new puppy, we want everyone to go back to life stage 1, a quiet time, a time for safety, a time for nurturing, a time for these beautiful maternal behaviours. Within that, we want to bring in these den sites so that an animal can understand their areas of safety, their pockets of safety, and the behaviours that we would give. It might be actually that we have a much older dog, but we're going on holiday. We know nothing about that environment and neither does the dog. This again can be an environment or experience where we can see a change in the dog's behaviour. I know many dogs that when they go on holiday, they just shut down and eating for a couple of days. There what we can do is look at diet, and that's because again, when they're taken to a new place, there are potential threats around. It's a new environment, a whole load of new information, new stimuli that that animal is absorbing. Again, anything and everything that the dog can hear, see, smell, taste, touch or feel. And of course it would make sense if that dog then has that vulnerability or simple uncertainty. The dog may not want to consume any food because it's going to have to go outside to go to the toilet to give information about itself in a space that it doesn't know anything about. So when we take our dogs on holiday, it might be we have a much older dog that's already at life stage 6, but again we can bring that dog for those hours or couple of days to life stage 1. We might just walk that dog locally for a couple of days when we take it on holiday. We might bring out those rendezvous sites, so we're sat in that new space rather than being on a march or on a walk or on a trek. We're just spending a couple of hours or a couple of the first days of our holiday where our dog can just absorb that information. We're at rest with that dog, so very much like how an adult wolf would give that wolf cub the support, we would sit and we would provide a presence of safety for our dogs. We feel safe enough to rest here. It is okay to rest here. It might be in the winter time if we have an older dog that is unwell or has arthritis or just finds it painful to walk. That's going to be harder for the dog in the winter time. So again, we might change the life stage then. It might be how the environment changes from day to day. Is it windy? Our dogs as canines and as predators rely on their eyesight to detect movement. So on windy days, everything is moving, which means that certain functional characters, certain genders, certain dogs as individuals may change their behavioural response, may be more reluctant to go out or even change how they respond when they're outside because of simply a windy day. Or equally when it's raining, a dog can be distracted by the sound of raindrops, which might make them feel more anxious or more spooked if things appear from maybe out of nowhere. Equally, I work with the life stages to understand what my dogs need. So what I don't want to create is an athletic dog. I don't have my dogs for sports, I don't have my dogs to exercise intensely with. A couple of my dogs are large breed dogs, and people often say to me, I bet your dogs need a lot of exercise. And actually I say to them, no, not really, they don't. They need a lot of stimulation, they need a lot of interaction, they need a lot of time with me, but not just exercise. And that's because if I walk my dogs for 2 hours a day every day, then in 3 weeks' time I'm probably going to have to walk them for 2.5 hours a day. And then in another 3 weeks' time, I'm going to have to walk them for 3 hours a day. And another 3 weeks' time, I'm going to have to walk them for 3.5 hours a day. By just simply focusing on exercise and lots of exercise, I'm turning my dogs into athletes, which means it's going to be harder and harder and harder for my dogs' bodies to want rest and my dogs' bodies to tire. So I'm likely going to set myself up to fail and therefore my dogs to fail because I'm getting to a point where actually I can't go to work because my dogs haven't been exercised all the time. In terms of balance, in terms of wellness, that is not supporting my dogs. So again, we need that fine balance between movement and rest. So exercise is important and not too much of it. Sure, getting out into the environment and being hours away from home or being miles away from home, but interacting with that environment, sitting down and being at life stage 1, telling our dogs it's okay to rest here, allowing our dogs to explore and investigate and have that mental stimulation. Those things are really, really important. I'm also a really big fan of our dogs not having a walk every day. And when our dogs aren't walked really, really depends. There's no rhyme or reason to it. But that is because our dogs love routine. A part of routine is being able to predict things. And what can happen is for dogs that are walked every day, they can start to learn in their routine that at some point they do go out. Now that just puts a little bit of extra pressure on us because something might happen in our working day. We may be stuck in a traffic jam, there might be a family upset, there might be an illness, where simply something arises where we cannot walk our dog that day. Because it becomes part of our dog's routine, again, this can create cracks in the dog's wellness. It can create a change in the dog's behaviour, the dog's emotional response, the dog's interaction. But if a dog knows in its routine, just every now and again, they have a rest day, they have mental interaction within the house, they have a day that focuses just simply on life stage 1, bringing back, reassessing and reaffirming these trust behaviours, these maternal behaviours, these nurturing behaviours. I equally promote missed walk days for those dogs that might find the outdoors a bit of a challenge. Those dogs that are very sensitive to their survival. Those dogs that might react towards other people, other dogs, or just where their nervous system is very, very sensitive that can quickly change. For these dogs, we need to think about recovery. So for a dog that maybe has been on a walk and unfortunately had to react, had to get hyper-aroused because it met a stimuli that it couldn't cope with, the adrenaline that's going to be present in that dog's body is going to be in the dog's body for longer than 24 hours. So again, we want to set our dogs up to succeed. We don't want to set them up to fail. We want to give our dog's body rest. And for those dogs that have been outside and felt the need to react, it's very important that we give them time to rest. And it's very important that for most of these dogs, we're going to give them longer than 24 hours. If we don't do that, then we run the risk when the dog is then taken back out into this environment, it's already going to be hyper-aroused, which means it's already going to start to potentially show further irrational behaviours because the body has not had opportunity to become back to calm and go back to calm from the day before, where it's had to react to that stimuli that it was struggling to cope with. So again, it's about understanding our dog as an individual and how to safeguard it depending on how its experiences and behaviour changes on a daily basis. So this is something that I do with one of my dogs. As well as all of the work we have done with her to support her ecosystem, one of these things that we put in place is her recovery time. Now, her recovery time has drastically improved, but what I still allow for is if a situation has arose where her nervous system has shown inflammation, her body has had to react, then I'm going to assess what recovery time she needs and how much rest she needs. Equally, if we give our dogs a missed walk, it gives us some rest as well. As humans that love our dogs so much, we really feel bad if we don't get our dogs out on that daily basis. But remember, our dogs don't need that because our dogs need recovery and our dogs need rest and they need it as part of their routine. But also as a human, we are only human at the end of the day. And something may happen in our working day where we just have work to do, where we have to see a family member, where we actually just don't feel well ourselves, or maybe we suffer with anxiety, depression, or lack of confidence, and maybe we just don't feel like getting our dog out because our dog can sometimes be a challenge and we're just not quite comfortable in dealing with that day. That's not a bad thing, but if we do feel that on that day, then we can do something else with our dog rather than exercising them. We don't have to exercise them physically every day, we can exercise their mind as well. And doing both is absolutely key, and again, promoting our dog's wellness. So, throughout our dog's life stages, we're not just looking at our dog as now an adult that has reached life stage 6. We're looking at our dog as an individual. We are understanding the canine wellness wheel and all the different factors that make up a resilient canine. We are understanding our dogs are a genetically ancient canine that live in a modern day world, and how and when it may be necessary or fair to bring our dog out of life stage 6 and place them back into a smaller life stage. Life stage 1 for a new environment. It's windy, it's wet, it's dark, it's cold. My dog is aging, my dog is in pain. My dog is sensitive and can't cope with that environment or had a bad experience the day before, so we're going to slow everything down. I'm introducing my dog to new stimuli, so in terms of desensitizing, I'm bringing my dog to life stage 2. I want my dog to progress to life stage 3 or to life stage 4. I have a rescue dog, so I'm starting with life stage 1 and progressing necessarily. Depending on the dog as an individual, the dog as a whole organism, we're allowing the dog to learn in its own time and also graduate in its own time, given the dog's functional character, age, gender, and whether the dog is a puppy or whether we have the dog as a rehome.